Parks and Trails Commission elected to move forward with Play World as a vendor, so we have a design that includes 2 to 5-year-old area and a 5 to 12-year-old area. We incorporated the hillside so that we have 2 bridges and 2 embankment slides that come down the hillside on the east side of the playground, and then the trails connect the playground area to the building plaza and parking lot. Next slide. So these are the designs of what the play structure looks like. We incorporated the agricultural theme and into the towers and the 2 to 5-year-old structure. So there you can see one of the slides coming down the hillside. And then this is looking from the east. You can see the bridges that connect from the sidewalk up to the tower, and then the other embankment slide. And then the splash pad, we got 2 different designs from 2 different vendors, and the Parks and Trails Commission elected to move forward with aquatics. Again, like Jess said, we incorporated some surface features and then also a few above ground features. So there's many options for what would be incorporated in terms of the above ground features. So we have a few images showing what the splash pad would look like. So these above ground features are nature themed, but they have many different options for what those look like here. This slide is highlighting again where that regional trail is. So at the south end of the parking lot, the dashed line, that is a section of trail that would not be paved in the first phase. The idea is that the trail would eventually connect across County Road 50, but we don't know exactly where that will be. So we've been talking with Three Rivers Park District. We looked at a few different options, but we identified that as potentially connecting towards the east if the crossing occurs closer to where the existing warming house is today. So in the first phase, the trail will be built starting at the southwest corner of the parking lot and then all the way to County Road 10. This slide highlights some of the alternate items. So in looking at the full park build out that we've designed so far, these would be items that we chose to identify as alternates, so we would bid them as not part of the base bid. So the pickleball courts, some of the paved trails through the ball fields, and a lot of the lighting, and then another paved trail that provides ADA access down to the T-ball fields, the open air shelter behind the park building, and some additional outdoor storage. So now we can get into the budget scenarios. So we went through several iterations of trying to identify how the existing park dedication funding could be used to construct something this year. So we looked at scenario 1A, which does not include a building. It includes playground, fields, parking lot, regional trail, no splash pad, no building, and the total estimated construction cost would be $4.5 million for that, which includes the remaining design fees projected. The next scenario includes a full building, which would include only a gravel parking lot, so this does not meet the city code requirements, but it would get that full building built. And no playground splash pad will be included in that scenario either, and that is a little over $5 million. Scenario 2A would be the full building with minimum paved parking lot, so not the full parking lot as shown in the concept, but a smaller version of that. No playground, no splash pad, that would be almost $7 million. Scenario 2B, we would elect to build half the building, so the portion with the restrooms and kitchen, the western side of the building, with the parking lot and playground, which may have a few limited elements, would scale back on some of the features in the playground, and that could be traded out with the splash pad. They're roughly the same cost.
Quick question, when you say half the building, do you mean like finishing half the building, or building potentially the whole building but only finishing a portion of it?
It would only be building half of the building, so we'd have the pad there, the foundation to build the remaining part of the building on the east side, but we'd only finish.
We'd only do the first part.
So the unbuilt upon pad, could that still be plaza area
Yeah.
at that level?
Until we built the rest of the building?
You mean? Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, at this point, we haven't, that's a conceptual idea, we haven't designed the building that way, we've designed it the full way, so that would be more design in order to design how that could be built halfway with the opportunity for the expansion in the future.
If you didn't do the building, would you just put a cement slab in for the building?
That's a good question, probably,
Okay,
probably just have something. there.
Unless we were sure that we didn't want it, which I don't think we are,
right.
like at any time.
Something to note, there is some give and take there, so if there isn't a building in place, then we can't do a splash pad, because you need to have running water bathrooms in order to have the splash pad run.
And we'd have to put those, like, pre-place those utilities for the future building.
Water rating.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think in all scenarios, you probably want to bring the utilities in the first phase, just so that it's out of the way, because that's going to be underground, everything else going over the top, so you're not disturbing that later.
So scenario 3 includes the full plan, which I just described in the previous slides. And then the next slides include a graphic. This is the full cost estimate that was summarized in the previous slide. So the red cells highlight the items that are missing from each of these scenarios. And again, we can look at a hybrid of two or more of these scenarios in order to accomplish what is desired this year. So this slide highlights scenario 1A, again, this is going without the building at all. So this is a lot of the site work. 1B includes a full building, gravel parking lot, very limited site work, and then the regional trail, which is included in all the scenarios due to the reimbursement from Three Rivers. And then 2A, so this includes the full building and some of the site work, but not the playground and the splash pad. And then 2B includes, this is the one that includes half of the building and the playground, the parking lot, and the fields. And then scenario 3 includes everything. So on all of these slides in yellow is highlighted the park dedication amount or city funding that would be needed to accomplish any of these.
Ballpark question for Jay. Put on your finance hat for a second. The scenario 3, if we bonded for the gap, what is the annual expense to cover that?
Well, lucky for us, our long-term financial planner is present. But in terms of financing the gap, if we were to bond for that, like, it depends on what we get for a rate. So that's going to impact us. The length of the bond, how long, 10 years?
Well, it would depend. I don't know what the gap is, but in a moment, when you're done with this, I'm gonna get up there and speak about the 2025, so we could look at one of those.
So we could look at that as a scenario. But one of the things that is important to note, so there's a little bit of cash flow. And so staff was talking about this before. So while we currently have $5.3 million in park dedication fee, we're also going to be reimbursed at some point $500,000 for CPF dollars from the federal government. And we're also going to get anywhere between 525 and 1.2 million reimbursed for the regional trail. Depends on the cost. They're only going to reimburse us for the cost of the trail. And so those numbers shouldn't be factored into what we're trying to do, because but we've got to cash flow it.
There's
And
also
so-
that other grant opportunity.
So timing happens, and the mayor and I have been talking about other grant opportunities as well, both for trail, and then JCB is always looking for grant opportunities. So there might be other money out there, but right now, it's important to note that our actual potential sources is more like 6.5 million. But we've got a cash flow everything above 5.3 million until we get reimbursed with it.
Okay.
And so timing is really important. And if we've watched like the federal government right now with their freeze, we don't know how that's gonna impact our reimbursement as that goes through HUD. And so we might have to carry that a long time and potentially forever, like they might just cancel it. We don't know. We haven't gotten answers related to that, what's gonna happen. We do know that we will get reimbursed in a timely fashion from Three Rivers Park District, but we have to pay it and then we get paid back. So I just wanted to emphasize that in terms of what we're looking at for a park project. There's another a little more than $1 million above park dedication. And then the timing of this matters too, as Natalie mentioned. We'll get roughly $1 million here coming in this year, as
Under
long
the
as
current formula?
development happens the way that we think it will. And then this ties into the question that we delayed previously about what about these other neighborhood parks? Are we going to fulfill our social contract with these other neighborhood parks?
What was the question, Mr. Mayor?
I think I may have answered it in my head after that, but, $1 million coming in under the current formula, or is that stuff that's already been final platted?
So the $1 million is final plats that we are working on wrapping up, so we're expecting those fees to be coming in soon. I think, because I outlined it in my reports, I just want to make sure. But I believe
So
those
it'd
are
be
all the
interesting.
final plats, and then we have, final plats, and then, Fairway Shores was preliminarily approved, and that's a little over 300,000. I think it's a two-phase development. They are working on trying to come in with a final plat this year as well.
Okay.
So I would assume we can expect something to come in as well for that.
How long are we thinking a update to the park dedication fee would take?
I
Ballpark.
can prioritize it. So we have, I don't know.
Fair enough.
The
6
next
weeks best
couple
case.
weeks are really rough
Yeah.
for me.
Mhm.
But once we get past, so basically we have, March is gonna be a bear of a meeting for planning, and then once we get past, once I get done with the planning commission reports, the city council reports tend to be a little easier, so then I can switch gears and go back to park dedication stuff.
Six weeks
So
minimum.
yeah, probably about 6
Gotcha.
weeks.
I'm just trying to think for stuff that we know is coming in that has been final platted yet.
Mhm.
The more that we get under the new formula, the better.
Correct,
Simply.
yes, absolutely. And then we have Chastic Family Farm preliminary plat coming in. We have, I forgot that Brockton Business Park also will have some park dedication. And then Hope, last we talked with Hope, they were planning on at least the bill, the rest of the bill is coming in this year, so that's some of that too. And so it's all based on when the final plat is approved, what the park dedication fee is at that time. So yes, if I can get this updated for those final plats to come in, that should help as well.
Gotcha.
But all that to say is, I would say roughly $1 million is what we're anticipating this year, and being conservative with that number.
Yeah, definitely conservative.
So, but based on the best of my knowledge, so.
Gotcha.
So back to my point about the timing matters, and then to circle back to the bonding question. You know, that gets into the questions about tax capacity and where are we spending our tax capacity? Are we spending it on debt service to go for parks? Right now, we're using tax capacity and we're bonding to pay for equipment that's necessary to provide the services that come with that increased requirement with the increased population. And so that would be a shift in philosophy if we chose to take debt service, and rather than focus it on the increased demand for services, we shifted in this direction. Because as we do this too, there's also going to be increased demand for maintenance that isn't calculated right now in terms of future costs. This is just to get it delivered. So when we get this delivered, we're going to need more equipment, and we're going to need more people, and
Even rec programming.
right, yeah, it's going to activate spaces in a different way. And so there's a wave of additional costs that are going to come. And so if we use up our tax capacity in order to deliver the project, we aren't going to have it in order to maintain it.
And then I don't wanna overlook, so we talked about the 500,000 from the federal government, the 525,000 from Three Rivers. Hennepin County, we also have a grant for 300,000 as well, and
We have
some
to use that this
donations.
year.
Nope, 2026.
2026.
Thank you. Oh,
So-
I was tracking this year, so
But we
yay.
do want to get moving, yep. So roughly right now, fundings from other sources is about 1.475 million, in addition to our park dedication.
How about the family?
The family, so
That's a
it's a TBD. And then we're looking at other creative sources as well, and that's a TBD.
Okay.
So I think some of those efforts, I think when, staff's best case scenario, potentially working with creative sources for the playground and splash pad and focusing efforts on the building, and the funding on the building, that would be kind of where we're at. Obviously, we're looking for where you're at as a council, but that would be one way we could look at it is we can focus on creative funding sources for the playground and splash pad as long as we have the overall vision for those areas. And then we could focus on the rest of the improvements with the funding that we do have currently.
We do have $100,000 from the JC that's dedicated towards the splash pad too. But we can't redirect those funds towards anything else without talking with them. And right now in our last conversations, there's a desire, as I understand it, to be patient rather than redirect. Like that was my last conversation. So,
Oh, I guess, yeah, okay.
yeah.
You might have had a more recent conversation.
And there might be flexibility there, but there's not, that's $100,000 as well. But it's currently earmarked specifically for an amenity.
And I think from discussions with the family, I believe they are very interested in the playground, so.
Yeah.
So,
So my initial thoughts were, I like scenario 1A because it allows you to get the playground, which was the #1 requested amenity in the community feedback that we received. I also like that it's affordable. I think we could even look at maybe adding in some of the pickleball optional items under that scenario, since there would be enough park dedication funds in hand to cover that. I did not like 1B or 2A because they don't deliver #1 or #2 in the priority list. I could support 2B with either the playground or the splash pad. I guess I would probably prefer the playground just because I think it'll get used more. Splash pad's really only helpful on a hot day in my experience.
That is true. Can I add a potential, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, just a potential counter argument, is that we do have a playground, might not be what we want it to be, but we don't have a splash pad. So you can kind of look at it 6 one way, have it as another of, Michelle?
Yeah, can I add something into that? I see both points, but I would tend to agree more with Jeremy simply because I look at a park and I think that a splash pad is an extra. A park is like a basic park with like playground, equipment, slides.
Fair enough.
That's just my opinion. And then I think it's a nice balance too because we've already got the trail system that's going to be going in around. So then you've got the park that accommodates different ages. And then could we, at some point, if we go with, let's say, it's option 1A, could at some point, maybe in the future, we go out to the community and say, hey, would you guys be willing to support this? And then finish the whole park and see where that would lay or where that would lie. And maybe it's the building and the splash pad, or maybe it's the pickleball and the splash pad and the building separate in 2 separate questions to the community, like in the next election.
Can I ask one question,
like a
clarifying question?
referendum, is that-
Yeah.
As far as activating space, so all of the spaces that we're talking about in 1A are accessible depending on when thaw happens, from middle to end of May to early September when kids go back to school, versus some of these other options can be activated, like we were talking about, potentially for year-round programming. And so in terms of bang for your buck and impacting people, 12 months a year versus 120 days. I just raised that as a question.
I think you'll probably see a lot more use in terms of number of people, number of human hours on the amenities for the outdoor stuff than for the stuff that'll happen in the building. Not that there's not value in the building too, but I think it's much more cost intensive and it will probably have less use. I think longer term, I would like to see a larger building than what we have identified. I think when you're limiting it to 90 people, you're kind of scoping it out of a lot of larger uses for the city or for people who might want to rent it out. So I kind of like 2B, and then it gives you maybe some flexibility to change the building size if you have more funding available later. Maybe you bump it up to 200 people capacity or 250. But you're still getting in the essential, especially if you can make it into a plaza, so at least there is sort of that gathering space and people can activate that a little bit. I see that as an advantage.
A question for HKGI. We'd have to put in a pad that can accommodate that initially at the time of inception with the utilities and stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, if we were to do a option 2B, if we talked about potentially increasing capacity in the future, we'd have to build a pad that
I
has
guess
the
you wouldn't
capacity
have to,
increase
but it'd
the pad.
probably be the best,
Yeah.
the most fiscally responsible way to do it, yeah.
Okay. Just-
Right.
Yeah, I would agree, yeah.
Just real quick on my side, as far as the building and increasing the size, I'd rather put that money into a campus building and a campus room as far as that
Well,
goes.
but a lot of
and
this
have
is
multiple
tied up to
options.
park dedication where we can't do that.
Well, we're already over what we've
Yeah.
got money for. I'm just saying, I'd rather this be a little bit smaller destination than something that we aren't gonna need for a while, but I think a campus, including a community room, those kind of things, that a campus would be in our future, were to build this bigger and where the building is now and where the plans are now, where you had it, you can't go to the east because you'll fall off the cliff or the side of the hill. You can't go north because you're gonna move into the playground and such. I mean, it's a pretty specific size building plan unless you build into the parking lot or something like that. I think we're restricted to grow the building anymore. Hell of an idea, but I think where it's placed and the current plans y'all have done, I don't think you could put in a bigger building without taking away the plaza and then not having that outside seating around the north and,
I guess it depends
East
on how
side.
big of a building
Yeah.
we're talking about. But we initially were looking at about a 5,000 square foot building, this is about 3,500, so
okay.
Question,
somewhat larger building looks good, but it
For-
depends on what size you're.
question for any of the options that are like, you know, if we were talking about doing the playground instead of splash pad initially, does that include, so if we're not doing the splash pad up front, are we still running the water to where the splash pad will be? So that we're not digging up and doing all the utility work
You'd run it
later?
close,
Okay.
just kind of to a stem point where it makes sense.
Okay.
We'll look at that, make sure it's out of the way from any impacts to what you've installed so far, but in a spot that's not.
Easy to hook up to when we do
without
do it.
taking it too far where you just change your mind and maybe want to use it somewhere else. You didn't
Gotcha.
get too far away, then you're having to spend more running it somewhere else.
Gotcha. Thanks.
May I add some more complicating factors into the
Sure.
mix? So to both Jay and Counselor Nichols' points, with the building, it's kind of hit or miss whether or not it would get more use than the playground. I think it's arguable that we have quite a few different departments that have said some uses that they'd like to see it for, right? We've got firearm safety courses, we've got elections, we've got a variety of things that could be incorporated into the building, that we are using external agencies or their building space. As these other agencies are looking to develop their spaces as well, or maybe adjust their offerings, it kind of leaves us in a where do we go type of situation if we don't time it correctly. Additionally, I think it does offer an alternative to what we're offering right now, which is only youth athletics. So if I were to try and not necessarily sway you in a certain way, but at least get you to consider, like, we are really only offering for youth right now. And as we continue to have these older populations that are moving into dedicated living spaces, it's hard to say, hey, yeah, we'd love to offer something for you, but we're not gonna have pickleball necessarily with the first phase, and here's a playground. It gets kind of tough when we don't have anything else to really offer them at this time.
I think it's interesting that the demographic of the folks who responded were young families with kids. But if you look at the demographic of our community, none of them are here tonight. But we had other people that are here previously. Would their interests be represented in the proposal of just building amenities that are available during the summer? And also to build on what JCB's saying, those sorts of things that she's talking about, we can't currently continue to service. Like even the last election, we're having some problems when we had our public forum, and we've been asked by some of the people in the public to not continue to offer our public forum at a church because they felt like that inhibited their comfortability as a resident coming in. So we don't have an alternative right now. And as Councilmember Varian-Camp was talking about, like in the future, we definitely need to do a civic campus, but we don't have a plan to do that right now. We do have a plan to build a building that could be activated for recreational purposes. It would be the anchor to serve growing into some of the other opportunities as park dedication comes in. I would venture to guess that if we build the playgrounds and stuff first, this building probably isn't going to get built. Just because it is the most expensive piece of the project. And so if we don't do it, we're probably not really going to do it. It will get punted until it comes time to do a civic campus. And we are going to have a problem with what do we do with some of these other activities that we can't deliver the services that we need to. And when we went for a grant proposal for last CPF dollars, that was one of the justifications that we said is we currently don't have a public building. To Councilmember Varian-Camp's earlier conversation, other communities use adjacent schools, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. We don't have a single one in the community.
Now, I hear what you're saying. I can't support a plan that doesn't have a playground and or a splash pad in it. So that leaves us with scenario 3, which we don't have a viable mechanism to afford, from what I'm hearing from staff.
Yeah, we don't have a viable mechanism to deliver that kind of project without some of the other things that we have to do right now.
Yeah.
So scenario 3 has not been in a long-term financial plan. It would be a huge pivot from our long-term financial plan,
Right.
and it would have significant implications on other priorities that we need to pay attention to just to deliver our services.
And I want to make sure I heard you correctly. So you want to see either the splash pad or the playground? It's like an either or for your playground or splash pad, or you're saying you want to prioritize the playground?
I'm saying the plan should do one of the top 2 things
Okay.
that we got public feedback on.
So
I
then-
personally feel like the playground is more valuable than the splash pad, but I'm open
Well,
to.
we can't do the splash pad without the building.
Right.
So scenario 2B, and maybe it's like we need to, as staff, when we're talking, maybe it's a hybrid of 2B, figuring out how we can make 2B get those numbers to work a little bit more with the funding that we currently have.
One thing I would do is completely invert what we show as paved parking versus unpaved parking to start. I'd pave that 45 space lowercase b bump
That one
and
down
not the
there.
rest. Yeah.
Parks
But
and
2B
Trails
isn't the
had
full building.
specifically said they didn't want that to be developed until later.
Okay.
Because when you come into the park, it's more appealing to come into a nice grassy area than a big parking lot, especially since,
I get
unless
that.
we don't have the building anymore, then I guess that wouldn't matter.
I get that. Well, then maybe not that specific area, but equivalent amount of. I don't know that I would be interested in paving more than a very minimal amount off the bat.
And 2B doesn't deliver a building. It
Correct, so
delivers
maybe
bathrooms.
it's actually more figuring out how to combine 1B, 2A, and 2B. So figuring out how we can prioritize the building and the playground and figure out where else we can reduce costs potentially.
I'm gonna ask this one more time. Who said it? We already have a playground It might not be new, it might not be nice,
Well-
and it's a distance away, but
So that's kind of where I
what,
think.
in my belief, my big dream is if we build a building and we have a plan for a playground, we have all of this stuff,
Mhm.
people are gonna start, God, I would wish that we are gonna start having
Mhm.
people come in and say, I wanna buy this part of the playground, I wanna put in this part of, I wanna do the splash. I mean, we've already got a group that's throwing $100,000 identified for the splash pad and stuff. I love our wish list, but I don't wanna go broke before it's even built kind of deal. And we already have a playground. It's there, it might not be the nicest or anything, but we do have a pretty good park.
Can I add to that?
Yeah,
So if you were gonna go that direction, then why wouldn't we take the funds and put them into other parks then? If we have a park already at City Park, why don't we develop the other parks in the city then versus putting it into one building?
Because the funding that we've secured has been specific to this project, the
Yeah.
outsourced funding, and some of that's starting to expire this year. So, and this is the park project that will have the most impact for the community overall versus the neighborhood parks. And so that has been a decision that's been affirmed for a number of years now to get us to this point.
And I agree.
So-
I'm making a statement, we could choose many different things to do with that park dedication fund. And I think we're mincing things, trying to figure out how we're gonna make this work. I feel like we should work with what we have as our budget and what allows for that. What is the best option for people in our community to get the most use out of that, whatever it is that we decide. And when you look at a park or you look at a building, the park is gonna get more use. And if it's gonna be our shiny park, it's supposed to be the nice park of Corcoran, to me it makes more sense to put that money then into the playground and into what we've developed so far. And still see if we can go in sections, and maybe we won't build the building for another 5 or 6 years, 10 years. Maybe at some point we can go out to the community and say, hey, we wanna build this, what are your thoughts? Are you willing to fund this?
This is tough.
What do we do about the services that we can't deliver because we don't have a public space?
Have to find a different space. What do other communities do that don't
They have
have
they've
spaces?
got
Yeah,
schools.
schools, the big
They've got
difference.
Or they have a
churches.
larger
We've
city hall
been-
campus.
Yeah.
We've been
Yeah.
told that
We-
there's a
We had a
number of
community
people
room,
that don't wanna
uh,
go to a church for
Yeah.
a city function. I
We-
mean, it's sad.
Yeah,
I'm all
I've gotten
about
yelled
Can we
at.
get a
churches
library?
and stuff.
There
I've
you
gotten
go.
talked
yelled
about
at
it
for
before.
Hennepin County Library,
having
yeah.
planning events at churches.
Yeah,
Well, we
like
gotta
in
build the
libraries,
building
now they're
probably
talking
for the
about
library
very
before they'll bring the
small,
books. I
compact,
mean, it's just
more
silly.
digital. So I don't know that that would be a huge.
We could potentially use the Public Works building for like an elections if we needed to in a pinch. Because that was reviewed a year and a half ago. And it would work. It would take some doing. You'd have to have some set up to make sure that people are only allowed in a certain space. But that we do have options. It's not that we don't have a space.
So we have the Public Works building, that's literally the only space other than this one, because we chose with the renovation to eliminate the community room. That was a conscious choice based upon emerging demands. And so when we were doing engagement, you know, and we were talking as staff, we identified that, and we submitted for a grant for it, because we do not have a public space that's owned by the municipality, where we can do planning engagement. You know, we're having to partner, and we have great partners, but legitimately, some of our residents are uncomfortable going into the spaces that our partners have, because it's two different churches. St. Therese is also a potential other good partner, but their spaces aren't that large. They're smaller than the present space that we're talking about building. So that's my big question is, what do we do in the next 5 years as we have some significant things happening in which we literally do not have a public space, and one of the visions was this would deliver that, as well as, you know, fire safety or firearm safety right now. We've got a great partner, because we can't deliver it on our building anymore since we got rid of the community room. That's one program, and then there's other things that can't happen here.
Can I add to that and just say, I'm still receiving calls to this day for people looking for reservable space.
You know?
And it's been years, I mean, at least, what, 5
Yep.
since the remodel? I don't know where they're still finding the information, I've looked online, it's not on there, but people want a space, and while I understand it might not have reflected as strongly in the survey, if you had the option between, to them, it's a building that they might use, maybe they'll enter it 3 times a year, but in the grand scheme of things, the impact that it would have on the community, I think, is quite large. To Councilor Varenkamp's point, yes, we do have a playground. Again, just to complicate it a little more, it's about 25, 30 years old.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're right, it's not shiny and new, but it's also getting to the end of its life cycle. So we're starting to hit a lot of wicked problems, and
To complicate that
staff
further,
needs guidance.
Well, yeah,
It's like-
and I get,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, Mr. Ray.
to complicate that further though, we're not talking about not doing a playground, we're talking about potentially not doing a playground to start.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Like what's our best
So-
first move? What's the most immediate need? So when we came to council, we asked to approve the design plan, the overall concept. And so we've validated through engagement and through lots of thought from our commission that all of these things are important to the community. That's why they've risen to the top, ended up in the design plan. So the question is the phasing of it. Where do we get the most bang for the buck with the 5.3 million that we have right now? And back to my question, is 120 days making nice fields and a playground the most bang for the buck for the community?
Where I struggle is, we've collected $5 million in park dedication, not municipal building dedication. That's a secondary role, and if we had a surplus of funds where we could afford to do things that would address both needs, I would see the value in striving for that synergy. I can't in good conscience spend 10 years of development dedication toward parks so people don't have to walk into a certain building, or people can go to a firearms class. That's not what that money is for. It's for parks and recreation.
To add complications to it further, I think you could argue that hunting is a recreational activity
Yeah.
for a lot of people in this community specifically.
And as someone who ran facilities in another community, that was part of the argument. Like, park dedication was going towards building a community center in which people could gather, because that's part of how people recreate as well. So when I go to my family reunion, that's an opportunity for recreation. When I go to my service organization meeting, when I go to my Zumba class, those are all different ways of recreating, not just outside on a playground or on a field.
And if this were 10% of our park dedication funds, I would accept that argument. But we've spent $60,000 on a playground, and we're gonna spend 5.2 million on a building. That's not a park. But it's in a park, but it's not serving that same recreational need. I feel like our priorities would be out of skew to allocate resources in that way.
So I do want to just refocus our conversation a bit.
Sure.
So this is not by any means the final design. So what we need to walk away from tonight is an ability to understand your priorities so we can go out for construction documents and then we can get some more final numbers as part of the bidding process. What I'm hearing is the building is a priority as well as the playground, and potentially figuring out a plan where we can lower maybe some of the pavement costs and still prioritize the playground as well. The building might be able to be something that we're all meeting those needs, as well as the field work and everything as well. So as far as what we go out for construction documents for, it sounds like it's scenario 2A plus a playground. And then you would still bring this back to you, and if it's still no on the building, yes on the playground, we can still do that, is my understanding. But I think as far as what we need to go for construction documents, I'm hearing we need both, and then we'll make a to be determined on what does move forward. So we don't have to make a decision tonight on the playground versus the building, but I think we do need to make a decision that those are the two priorities that we want to do construction documents for. Is that accurate?
Can I ask a question? I don't want to waste more staff time and more time with our consultant and more money. I mean, if this is what our pricing is, and we've been working on this for over a year. So I don't know if you bring that back, which I think is wonderful, how big of a difference is it really going to be? Like,
Well, presumably we're gonna need the construction documents for all of it at some point. So we'd just be doing some more of it
So,
upfront.
so in the bidding process, these are estimates.
yep,
You know, so we've looked at what we think is gonna happen. They're now educated assessments, so lots of experience, but also when we go out for bid and those things, that can change. So we can bid with alternatives, and then that gives us options, because sometimes, and we've experienced this, the bid comes in way lower than we thought, and if we had had those alternatives in there, we could have gotten a whole lot more than what we asked for. And so, for example, with the building, there might be ways that we can design the building so we get something, but maybe we wait to, for lack of a better phrase, to put the curtains up until later, but we get the structure so that we can at least do something in it. Or maybe it's the smaller building so that we have bathrooms. Like right now, bathrooms are really important. If you're activating a playground in today's world, those families there, bathrooms become pretty important. Or porta-johns, you're paying for them. And you got
Maybe we're
continued expense.
phasing elements of the playground.
Or phasing, so we do the little kid playground, or there's lots of different ways to address your question in which you can play with the timing of it, creating alternatives in order to achieve your funding goals. And then when you go out for bid documents, sometimes they surprise you.
Yeah, so I think that's what I'm trying to, I think what I'm hearing right now is building and playground there's reasons to prioritize both. And so I think it would be a waste of time to not go with construction documents that has both, because we can always say, we're not doing the building right now, we're just gonna do the playground. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Gabby, but.
Yeah, actually, the playground is the one we have the best number for, because we got the quote from the vendor, so that's pretty solid. But the building is one that's variable in terms of the bid, and then the parking lot and utilities is variable in terms of what we pay versus not pay and how big it is.
Could I just give a couple minor notes on the playground? Could you go to the slide that showed the 5 to 12-year-old version?
And I will note, there were some adjustments that the Parks and Trails Commission wanted to see to this, and there's still time to
Okay.
update that, but.
okay.
So first one is, it would be nice to have multiple different kinds of slides rather than them all being the straight chute type. Like in Central Park and Maple Grove, they have one where it's like a series of like roller bearing. So whenever I went to that park with my kids, they like to do the different versions of the slides on that same hill. So rather than have, I think there's maybe two, you could have them be two different styles. And then the other thing was the bridge. I don't think you can see both of them super clearly here. If these two bridges, if those can be different from one another as well. Like if one of them can be like the loose plank style that rattles when you run across, that can be really fun for kids that the stationary ones aren't. And then it's more fun to do a circuit. So just a couple minor points. Hopefully it doesn't change cost much.
And I'm assuming if we were to proceed with these documents, that's when we'd get more of a breakdown on maybe how we could phase a playground. Like more of a itemized breakdown of the cost
Yeah.
of the playground.
You could select specific equipment that's isolated.
Okay.
Mayor, can I just add two comments that I'm
Sure.
hoping will help reframe some things and not extend or complicate things? Just looking at the scenarios and their cost estimate, it's about 2.8 million roughly for the building. So we're talking about that as like a placeholder. It looks like, 5.3 because that's the base cost, but a lot of that's in the infrastructure and the underground stuff. So a full building as proposed is 2.8. And then a half building is like 2.2. So that just gives you some context on the economy of scale that if you have to commit a little bit earlier, but you really, it's advantageous later. So whether that helps you or not, that's a big difference in scalability. And there's probably some things so they can work with the architect on, in terms of, do you build a shell and then unfinished stuff? To your point, it might save it's gonna save in the 10-15% range, I would project, not that. But to me, it's hard to pay 2.2 million for a 22,000 square foot building. So I just want to throw that out there for context, because you do get some serious scale. So to your point, almost even expanding the building, you're going to get some scale if you actually commit to a building. Food for thought. The other point that I believe, I just want to make sure it's clear right now, we're proposing like one contract for the site improvements, infrastructure, and a separate contract for the building itself. And that's really to realize like the overhead you pay, but they're two different builders that essentially do that. So I don't know if this helps or not, but you could almost, we know we want to do something this year. You could almost bid out the site plan, get your number, realize your number is better, or we have a lot of new data, or we got grants, or we fundraise, and then you could immediately pivot into that design, and you'd almost kind of start the process this year, and then maybe the building gets added next year. It's not tipping the scale, but that's how we can be creative in the timing, keep things moving. If moving this year is a priority, that may be a suggestion we can do, because it is being set up as two separate contracts, so it's pretty simple to, or you just bid them out both, but it's real easy to peel that other contract out. So just food for thought.
And another layer, if and when we do build the building, you shut down the playground and the splash pad for the window of time. So that could mean for an entire summer, because you're having to, for the safety of the site. So the timing of that matters too. Like how it's, you know, if we do the building later, at some point, it's going to impact the operations of the other sites because of the construction, the safety of the site. And I experienced that in Shakopee, in Lions Park, that it impacted a lot of other things when we shut down Sam Venture. I wasn't expecting it to have so much impact. And so trying to get as much of it done at once as you can, that
There's a value there that's hard to quantify.
right.
And this is one last side note, and I'll close. I do want, it feels like the costs are going up, but I just wanted to highlight, you know, the team here worked really hard to remove the turn lanes. We worked with Hennepin County.
Oh, yeah.
The turn lanes that were required with the first phase got deferred by Hennepin County to the second phase, which means what's the second phase? So that's a $500,000 right there. So keep that in mind, that if we do carve it up small, they might come back and attach a $500,000. So this is a lot of moving parts. We're spinning a lot of plates. I realize that, but I do want to credit our team for that effort. It's really, it's not only technical, it's relationship driven, and it's there, and that's a real, you know, placeholder for $500,000.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So if you do small enough extension projects, maybe you never get to phase 2.
Well, but they phase it as phase 2, so and if they have new
eventually.
personnel there, that's subject to change. So not just, again, making sure we're all having the data to make sure.
A quick question. For some of these other grant options that we want to explore, and I'm anticipating I would like to go back out and reach out to Representative Morrison about similar application that we did in the past with Representative Phillips. Do we need to get council, have we done council approval for that? And if so, we should maybe get that on an upcoming agenda so we have.
I wasn't here when previous grant proposals went
I think
forward.
we ran it.
So I think we could handle it two different ways, and John can validate this. One, it could just be direction right now, if council were in favor, that since you have led the charge, you could work with staff to help us, or if there were other interested parties that wanted to be part of that. But for us to just say, let's do that, rather than slow the process for grant, you know, so like JCB and I cranked out a grant in like 6 hours because we hit the timeline. That would be an example in which council empowered us to be able to do it. That might be the best
John, would
course
you
of action.
want a motion on that, or just
Or do we bring back
Consensus.
Is this like blanket for any grant? Is this a specific grant? I think I missed
At
that
least
part.
for, community project funding grants
Okay,
for the federal government, and, I know of at least one significant DNR trail grant that I'd like to go for.
the outdoor rec one.
Any thoughts on that, John?
It might be good to prepare a resolution, just so there's a tracking for it, so we could bring that back at the next meeting.
I'll make a motion to direct staff to do that.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So then, how do we feel to wrap up this discussion with scenario 2A plus a playground for the purposes of the construction documents? It should bring back for a final decision.
I could live with it.
I'm just,
Everything died on me up here. What's 2A with,
2A would be
you
the
can just go to
full-
2A for me.
2A
Thank
is
you.
the full building, minimum paved parking lot, and then we would do the playground for the, we would change it to add the playground. There would be no splash pad, but we would still be doing the
Initially.
trail and all the rest of the site work.
That'd be
So that includes the soccer field leveling too?
I will defer to Gabby, yes.
Okay.
Would this be gravel, a smaller?
Well, I think that's what we're gonna have to be creative with, yep.
So this is the hybridized idea?
This is the hybridized idea, to figure out where we can be creative with the parking lot to try to bring those costs down so we can prioritize the playground.
I support that.
And get more real
And get real numbers.
number.
Yeah.
I would say too, if we're gonna look at priorities, I would say playground is a priority and then the building, because I agree with Jeremy about the funds from the park dedication. I think that it should be specifically geared towards parks and recreation.
Do you have feedback in terms of phasing the playground so that we get something cool in and then potentially enhance it in the future?
Start with the coolest things first.
Okay.
Is the playground going up in its entirety immediately?
So instead of the full meal deal for the playground,
playground going up
like
in its
as much of the
entirety
playground
immediately?
as we can get.
Actually, that's a very good question because the Diamond Lake Regional Trail would navigate through it with the current alignment that was worked with Three Rivers on.
Is any of it movable?
I'd like to remind that it is a 25
I
to
know.
30-year-old playground.
I'm just trying to think,
and-
we're thinking of phasing. If we have something that's less beat up, does it make sense to get the newer stuff for the stuff that's more beat up? And then as the less beat up stuff gets more beat up, then replace that?
I don't think you can move any of those things.
Maybe not.
I
Yeah,
guess they're right.
and there's safety concerns for
Kevin,
some of it right
you
now.
can't pull those up without,
I think
you're
we'd wanna,
sticking more money into fixing them to move them than,
yeah, I think we
Find
could
new.
find a solution, I think, that would not involve relocating.
because those things are anchored.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put the confidence hat on, say we
So-
can come up with a solution.
Yeah.
I'll move
So-
to direct staff to craft a hybridized version of 2A that prioritizes the playground, then the building, by deprioritizing parking and other possible cost savings for the purposes of getting refined estimates and construction documents.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? I will add, I had a really good point and now it just completely escaped me.
Can I ask one follow-up question?
Yeah, sure.
With the deprioritization of the parking lot, I just want to make sure that we're meeting, is the standard paved or?
We would,
I just
think
wanna
in
make
order to
sure,
be-
like-
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at it, so just,
Okay.
that's where we're gonna get
I'd say we
creative.
get as creative as
Yeah.
we have to be, yeah.
Fair enough.
I think we'd have to
I'll give
make
myself
spots
2 more
for the
seconds
building.
to try to remember what I was thinking of. It had to do with the splash pad. Oh, are we at any concern of losing the splash pad, dedicated splash pad funding if we're delaying that out further?
We're gonna be having a conversation with them on Tuesday, Mr. Mayor, so
Okay.
we can revisit that.
Okay,
You'd still be stubbing the utilities, which
Yeah.
would have some cost as
yeah,
well.
I just don't wanna lose it. And if it's, oh, it's okay to push it out 2 years, but not 5 years, then we know where to try to, that's maybe the next thing we do after. So,
I got one more question. The soccer fields, the cricket pitch, what's the
Pickleball?
pickleball, thank you. there's not much excavation that needs to be done over there, correct?
There's a little bit.
Okay. Not enough to cut enough that makes this easier for us. That would be the last parcel I would do. I agree, and I see the playground and the building as the same priority in my mind. I don't wanna put one in front of the other. I think the year-round stuff, the stuff that I get are people that didn't fill out the survey, and you said most of the survey was younger families, those kind of things. I respect them all, that playground and that building are, I think, one and the same, so. I come from, like I said, Maple Grove, and that community center did so many things. But again, the evolution of that was come out of the gate with basketball courts, an indoor hockey arena, lockers, a pool, and then a fitness company that rented from the city. And that whole complex was paid for in 4 years. Didn't even hardly need bonding, if I remember Terry Just's way and stuff. We're building something a fraction the size and stuff, and I see the playground in the building at the same level. And then again, I'm wishing so much that build this and then the community just comes together and everything else comes without having to do more funding or anything. It's just, the dream I had was, hey, I'll build a building if I can put my name on it, you know what I mean? And we get naming rights, all that stuff. I like what you're doing, Natalie, of
Well,
coming up with.
I'm just talking a lot.
No, what I'm saying
All of
is
these.
scenario
Team.
2A with revisions, so you
Yeah,
guys
you did
have
a
done
good
a
job
good
of
job.
getting us to,
And for the record, Councilmember Varenkamp, please do not suggest that we'll do an ice arena here. I'm out.
As long as our ice
What if I could
arena
get some
keeps
NHL
going
players
the
to
way
Lived
it
there,
is.
done that, not doing that
No,
here.
our.
You don't wanna
our-
build ice town in
Players
Corcoran?
Our outdoor ice is freaking awesome, and it is something I would never wanna build a roof over, so, pretty cool.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second, and all sorts of context.
Yep,
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0.
thank you guys for putting up with us.
Thank you. Alrighty. We good to continue on with 9A, or does anyone need a break?
Let's go.
Okay. 9A. We have a public hearing. Is there any presentation you want to do before the public hearing?
Tammy's here, and we'd like to invite her to
Perfect.
chat, Mr. Mayor, and thank her for her patience as she
Thank you,
learned
Tammy.
about our parking, our parks and trails, and so thank you.
And while she's been sitting there, she's got all our finances figured out, so.
Mr. Mayor, council members, so the purpose of this public hearing, there's two resolutions before you this evening. There's a resolution approving a capital improvement plan. Capital improvement plan in this case relates specifically to municipal facilities. Under state law, in order to issue bonds to finance municipal facility improvements, including land acquisition for potential civic campus and the public works improvement, it requires a public hearing, which was noticed, and I don't know if it'll be held this evening. And then following that, there is a resolution to approve the capital improvement plan. And the capital improvement plan is sometimes misleading because you have a capital improvement plan when you think of it. In this case, it refers specifically to this document, and this document includes a not to exceed amount for the bonding. And that not to exceed amount, sorry, the night's getting late, so I gotta actually look so I don't misquote the amount. I think it's 4.7 million, is a not to exceed amount. The approval of this plan following the public hearing does not mean that you issue these bonds. It simply gives you the authority at a later date to issue these bonds. So with that, following the public hearing, I would recommend approval of this plan, and then I can either speak now to the other resolution, and the other resolution relates to calling for the sale of the Series 2025 bonds. So, Mr. Mayor, however you'd like to handle it, I know we have a lot in the audience that wants to speak.
Let's do I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Get that out of the way and give the opportunity. Is there anyone online? Oh, yeah. Well, just out of curiosity.
Irrelevant.
All right.
Close the public hearing.
We have a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then, you said we had the,
There's the resolution approving a capital improvement plan and giving preliminary approval to the issuance of capital improvement bonds. I do not have the resolution number, but that's.
someone have that number?
I'm trying to get there, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
2025-11.
Thanks.
11. Any questions on it from council? Understand the philosophy that Tammy was talking about. And it's kind of similar to what we did with our tax rate this year, where we set the higher not to exceed and then did the refining afterwards. And I was pretty happy with how that turned out.
I had a question on page 474 of the PDF. The header resolution 2025-12 has issuance of approximately 6.45 million bonds, but 2 pages above that, it's 4.7. Is one of those numbers wrong?
Trying to get there.
So while Jay's looking at that, Mr. Mayor, council member, so the resolution following the public hearing, the shorter resolution, authorizes the maximum principal amount of $4.7 million to be issued under capital improvement plan for land acquisition facility improvements. The $6,450,000, which is the resolution I haven't spoken to yet, that would be authorizing, and that is not a not to exceed amount. That's the $6,450,000 that's planned for the Series 2025A bond. So I don't have your packet, so I can't speak specifically, but the resolution that is the subject of the public hearing would authorize 4.7 up to 4.7.
Okay. So is the total, we would be potentially going for the 6.4
So
or the 4.7 plus the 6.4?
So the total plan, so the public hearing is subject to the 4.7.
Okay.
The Series 2025A bonds, which will be a separate resolution, the current plan is the principal amount of $6,450,000. Related to the CIP, which is the subject of the public hearing, the planned amount is currently less than that. It's planned that it would be $4,695,000. So of the $6,450,000, $4,695,000 would be related to the capital improvement plan, which is less than your authorized amount, should you approve the resolution of 4.7. That's just to give some room in case things would change. But I want to point out, ultimately, because I know you're in discussion on the use of these funds, you may choose to issue none of that, a portion of that. This action before you, following the public hearing, is solely to give you the authority to have those discussions.
Thank you.
And to reiterate, this sets the not to exceed amount, and then by March 13th, when we meet on March 13th, that's when we'll set the actual amount. Based on, we're refining, we're continuing discussions about what would be included in that amount, and council will be making some decisions about, yes, we want to proceed with this strategy, or no, we don't want to proceed with that strategy. Those decisions have to be made on March 13th. That's when we set the final amount.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2025-11.
So, there, either one of us.
Go Nichols and Varenkamp with the second. I don't know why.
Sounds good. What's that?
You can have the next one, Dean.
Yeah,
There you go, flip it
sure.
around.
I'm gonna disagree with that one.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then, is there any questions on the next one? I think, Jeremy, you got yours answered.
Done a lot of work, thank you.
Yeah.
Good job.
All
I
it,
will hold my comments unless there are questions. I certainly, there was a lot of information in your packet. The next one is the resolution providing for the issuance and sale of approximately $6,450,000 general obligation bond series 2025A. As Jay noted, there will be time for you to determine what that final amount will be. And the only thing else, I have before that I would note, the actual sale date for the bonds will be March 27th. Northland, on behalf of the city, will take bids that morning at 10 a.m. And that evening at the regular meeting of the city council, I will be present to present those bids, and there will be a resolution for you to award that sale.
Sounds good.
Do we need a public hearing on this one?
You do not
Nope.
need a public hearing on
Okay.
this in simple majority, just a consideration of the resolution.
I will entertain a motion to approve resolution 2025-12.
So moved. Camp.
Michelle, would you like to second?
Go ahead.
Second, Nichols.
Thank you.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Perfect.
Mayor Council, thank you. I will see you in March.
See you then.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
For
Tammy.
everything you do.
Thanks for your patience.
All right,
Stick your
Now
neck
to-
out once in a while.
fun reading part. City council will be entering into closed session. The city council will enter into a closed session pursuant to the authority granted by Minnesota statute 13D.05 subdivision 3C3 in order to develop and consider an offer for the purchase of real property. Specifically, the properties to be discussed are PID 26-119-2313-0006 and PID 23-119-2334-0001. We are in closed session. Call the meeting back to order. The city council just adjourned from closed session. In the session, the city council discussed the development of offers or counteroffers for the purchase of real property. The properties discussed were PID 26-119-2313-0006 and PID 23-119-2334-0001. Staff and the city attorney have been given direction. And with that, we will move on to staff reports. We have 3 on there.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So first, I just want to provide you an update on the classification and compensation study. So there was, we had talked about bringing forward a final implementation plan at today's meeting. I hit pause on that, and the reason is because on January 29th, we met in here during a lunch and learn with staff to discuss how the comp and class was going. And what I realized is, as I had given direction, I wasn't as clear as I thought I was, and so not every employee had an opportunity to talk with their director about the job descriptions. And so I wanted to make sure that that happened, so we hit pause on implementation. That's happening now. All the department heads are discussing job descriptions with employees. Just a reminder in terms of that process, every employee filled out a job assessment questionnaire. So they established a baseline in terms of what they thought their job requirements were. And then the department heads refined those job descriptions. So it's the city's prerogative, and we do that through our department heads we decide what the work is that we want for each job description. And so that's why they come before council at some point for approval, because council approves our jobs that we have. The way that we're operating, the department heads are clarifying what they see operationally and strategically is important for each job. What they're doing right now is clarifying those job descriptions with the employees. If we identify anything that's really important, department heads will let me know and by February 28th, and we'll correct anything that department heads feel is necessary to correct with job descriptions. And that gives us time for a future implementation. The goal right now would be to come back on March 13th with the job descriptions, with a plan to implement the comp and class. I don't foresee any big challenges, but who knows what happens with conversations. So the key part that I wanted to make sure happened was that the conversations were able to occur. So I own that I didn't communicate as clearly as I thought, and that's why I hit pause, because I think communication about this is really critical. Any questions about comp and class?
Reasonable decision. Good job.
Thanks.
Thank everybody for their input and openness.
So that's happening with that. The next item with the sign ordinance, we have communicated initially with someone who is in violation. We're a complaints-based code enforcement community. We had a complaint. We responded to the complaint. We are in the process of seeking compliance. We seek collaborative compliance with those who have a complaint, that's the desire. We hit an impasse in which, all right, we did what we could, and the person who was in violation wasn't collaborating. And then we've discovered that there were some other layers of complexity to it. And so Mr. Thames had identified that to do our due diligence in the past when we have removed signs, it has not been on private property. It has been in easements and in other spaces. And so he emphasized that it's important that we over-communicate so that everybody understands. And what we recognized was, okay, we needed to do that in some instances. We also found some other violators throughout this whole process, and we had to communicate with them. So what we've done is we communicated a suspense of compliance, and as they have passed that suspense, if they haven't come back to seek compliance, then we've communicated that we will remove the signs and they can come and collect the signs as we coordinate with them. It's important to note that the reason we have a challenge is one of two things. One, the signs are too large. So signs are free for a certain size.
Normal real estate signs, I
A
think.
normal
are
real estate sign.
free.
At no cost.
Yeah.
So the reason that we had a violation was because the signs are too large. Or the signs also have to meet other standards. So temporary signs are a problem, and we identified that as an issue. And we were working towards compliance with someone who is in violation with temporary signs. And that communication's ongoing. Don't know how that's going to end yet. So right now, the update would be there's an intention, unless we see different direction, that those who have exceeded the suspense, that we will remove the signs and notify them when they can pick it up. I also think it's important that I remind you that we did receive some correspondence from someone who is in violation, and in reading their situation, I seek your feedback on it, but I think staff recommendation would be at this point that we proceed with removing the signs, and we let him know that he can either have someone collect them or he can collect them when he returns to the area.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, all of the stuff you guys are doing is great. The content of those signs, I'm also concerned about kind of instead of land for sale, it's land for sale.
We really can't get into content of signs.
So one of the things with signs that legally, we can't do anything about what happens on the signs.
Not at all?
No.
As long as they don't violate our copyrights.
Right.
As long as they're within size, they can put whatever they want on them.
Generally speaking, sign regulations have to be content neutral.
Gotcha.
There are certain exceptions that really don't apply here, but basically, yes, it's got to be content neutral. Our policy is, we revamped it a number of years ago. But yeah, what you're talking about are sizing and placement requirements that people are violating, and so we're enforcing that.
Have we copyrighted our logo?
No.
We probably should, so people can put it on their signs.
That's a great point, yeah.
Not a bad idea.
So, I'm sorry, content we can't do anything about?
Very specific.
As long as it's not offensive.
Yeah.
If it's offensive, we have potentially but even then, what constitutes offense is.
Well, I wasn't looking for offense, or offensive or anything like that. I was looking more at, possible uses are, all of these things, that's neutral enough. We don't do anything with that.
We can't
We're
do
not
anything
saying
about
it's
it.
true.
Yeah.
I mean, people can say.
No sweat, I'm good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it gets to be a First Amendment issue, so it gets tricky.
I understand,
No, I hear you.
And anything else for feedback on the sign ordinance or other direction?
I think as long as, we want to make sure that if we do end up taking the signs in, that we keep them somewhere safe for them to
So that they don't get damaged or,
Right, yep.
yep.
And he's, so that, I do wanna be sensitive that he's not feeling well and out of town for a while, kinda out of his control, so I wanna make sure that we hold on to those until he's back.
And then too, just that you're contacting the private landowners too, in case it's regarding their property.
So the code violation notices are sent to both the.
I think they're aware.
Yeah, yeah, both the landowner, because it's ultimately the landowner
Yeah.
that we'd have to tie it to, but also the contact information that we have from the sign if it's not the landowner that has it up, so.
Okay.
Sounds good.
What size sign is approved?
So, for a typical temporary sign, it's a 32 square foot.
4 by 8 then?
Yeah.
Okay, Yep, gotcha.
And then you don't need a permit when it's less than, you're exempt from our temporary sign requirements when it's less than 4 square feet. So that would be a typical for sale sign.
Yep,
And then, so that's, it still has to meet location requirements, but it doesn't have to go through a permitting process. It's not limited by time. And then signs under 8 square feet are exempt from the permitting process, but are still subject to the temporary sign rules. But you don't have to pay for the permit or permit review.
quantity of signs on
You can only have one temporary sign. So again, if it's a sign that's less than 4 square feet, then you can get around the quantity rule. But temporary signs, it's one sign. We do have construction signs as well. Again, we can't regulate the content, but we tie it to the approval of a development. And then you can have 2 signs, and then there is not a time limit, not a strict time limit. The time limit is tied to the permits that are associated with the development.
And realistically, there's probably a combo of those different things that, in this case, could be done that would get pretty close to what.
We're
Also a PUD amendment, so within the PUD, there could be accommodations
Yep.
for signage, we've done that.
Is it, one last question, quantity of signs, is it related to the footprint of the entire area or each parcel broken out? I
So,
think you know what I'm talking
yeah, so
about.
so for the construction signs, it's the way we the way I wrote the code,
Yep,
it is per development. So I think we could be flexible in saying, well, in this specific instance, this final phase of the development really is its own development since it's its own builder separated from other aspects. So I think we could say that that's one development, and then once we get into other builders coming into the site for other portions, then we maybe treat them each separately. But like, for example, Tavera, they get 2 construction signs for that entire development because it's all really singular. It's one builder, it's one
Okay.
developer. I think it gets a little trickier when we have sub-developers essentially.
what about all the flags and stuff that are going up and such?
Flags is
A
one
little bit of a.
area in our code that that I
We
don't
don't
think
have,
is
right?
content neutral, and so that's kind of the workaround. So basically, we say flags of a non-commercial nature are exempt from the code, and that is content right there. So that's been kind of the one gray area of our code where it's a valid workaround for
So
Lennar.
they're able to put
They're able to put a sign up as long as
20-foot flag with,
if it's a permanent flagpole, they can put up a sign, or they can put up a flag. They
banners,
can't,
I shouldn't say flag, I should say banner sign.
so a banner is a little trickier. A banner, I would say, would be 32 square feet, and would be a temporary sign. And then they also can't do those flimsy, what are they called?
The dancing signs.
Yeah, like the flimsy signs that aren't attached to a permanent flagpole, but they're more of like, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with words
That's
at
all
the
right.
moment.
Kind of like tarp stretched over, like the.
Yeah, they're like they're these dinky poles in the ground, but they're very temporary in nature. Those signs or those flags wouldn't be allowed, but if it's attached to a permanent flagpole, then I believe our code does say that that's exempt. So, that's,
Sorry.
yeah, so that's been kind of one workaround for Lennar and Pulte, to still stay in compliance with our sign ordinance, while still having
Which,
some
for what it's
more-
worth, I haven't heard many complaints about it, actually.
I
I don't love.
I'm the one
it,
that's
but-
complaining
Yeah,
probably the most.
fair enough, yeah, I don't love it either.
You
I'm not shy.
I don't love it either, but it's better than what it
But
was
but
before.
the ones that bother me are the 4 big ones down in Lennar. I mean, they're 4 tall, 20-foot tall, and then we've got 4 over here that's not even on the property that's being developed, it's on the frontage.
So maybe give
In
Dwight
front
a
of him
call.
stuff, so-
Maybe give Dwight a call, because I don't know that these are on his
Yeah,
radar.
I'm sorry, I hate some,
No,
I
no,
gave
bring
my
that up.
election signs.
That
but I
second
put
one
my
might be an
election
issue.
signs up.
Yeah,
I
no, it
just-
sounds like those aren't in compliance, so if you could give Dwight a call, and then he can go out and do a.
You want me to
Yes,
up
yes,
you,
I'm asking.
okay,
Yeah.
since I'm the complainer?
Yep.
Okay. Dean
Can I ask
Camp,
one quick
9310 Bechtold Road, if anybody's wondering.
Just for perspective, like how big is a 4x8 sign? Like
Sheet of plywood.
32 square
sheet of
feet.
plywood?
was
Like
gonna
the size of the
The size of the Corcoran sign behind you?
Okay, or that sign?
That's pretty close.
No, that's smaller than 4x8.
That is.
Yeah.
1,
Yeah.
2, 3,
So that's pretty
4,
good
5,
size.
that's 6
Well,
foot.
it's pretty big.
It's a fair size.
Yeah.
I would
It's
say
plenty big.
we've had plenty of people comply with it and be able to feel like there's a visible aspect for that sign. So.
Okay,
Anything else on sign ordinance? So last one for staff reports would be goal setting and strategic planning. Thank you for your patience as we had to cancel the last one as I was out of town. My request would be council consider 2 different dates. February 24th is a Monday. And the reason I've asked for Mondays is because when we sought feedback before, that seemed to work best for the majority. So February 24th from 4:30 to 8:30. If that date cannot work, that would be the preferred date, so that we can get moving along. Then the second date would be recommended March 3rd from 4:30 to 8:30.
For me, the 3rd works better, but I might be able to do the other one.
The 24th, I can't start that soon. I could maybe do 5:30 on the 24th, but
Okay,
the 3rd would
so
work.
potentially adjust the timeline and that would work on the
Or the
24th?
3rd. The 3rd is better.
either days are good for me, time is, no matter. I'm
Third would
not,
probably
I'll
be
ask
better
your
for me.
concern.
3rd works a lot better
So
for
I
me.
hear 3 out of 4, the 3rd works best, so, can you do 4:30 on the 3rd, or that?
Yeah.
Okay, so 4:30 to 8:30 on the 3rd of March. All right. And we have materials, I'll send that info from our last session. We've got that translated into spreadsheets for you to be able to think about. You know, I heard clearly last time there was a desire to do some pre-work, so I'll try and get that out here
Okay.
next week. For your awareness, department heads will be meeting on the 21st, so I might wait until after that meeting so that feedback's included, as we try to refine some of our recommendations.
It's a lot of work, Jay, and department heads, thank you for your input. I know Jay appreciates, and I certainly appreciate your input too. I wanna make sure we're collaborating instead of doing something differently.
So that concludes staff reports unless Kevin or Natalie have anything. John, anything you want to share? Deb, you good?
I'm good.
All right.
I just
that's
have
all.
one thing, mini mayor report, or really more question. Does anyone remember who was with me on the last commission appointment? It would have,
Wasn't
you?
me.
It wasn't you, it wasn't Michelle. Was it you, Dean?
Yes,
Okay, so maybe it's Michelle now then, if we
For
continue
what?
with her. We have
We have to do
her
commissioner
vacancy on
interviews.
Parks and Trails
oh, okay.
to fill, which actually that might work well.
That would really be cool if
Yeah.
she could do it, because you came from there.
That'd be very
I
cool.
came from there a long time ago, but I would give up.
Came from a lot of places.
I've done a lot of things.
So,
Some I'm not very
I think we're planning on doing the appointment for the 27th
Right.
tentatively. So let's you and I touch base,
Okay.
in between now and then. I think we have for sure one candidate, possibly a second. Someone who had filed before, and I had said, when he called, to follow up, he'd like to keep his, file on, or his application on
Okay.
file. So I'm gonna see if he's still interested, and if so, we'll have 2 calls, and then we
Okay.
can, meet as a subcommittee and make a recommendation, or if we just have one. Pretty straightforward, so,
That's good.
okay, good deal. Anything else, any other, Dean?
I got a few, I'm trying, because obviously I gotta get up at 4, but, do we have any policy around attendance for our commissions? We've had some people that have been on frequently since they've been appointed and such. Is that something anybody feels strongly about, or just let it go?
I don't feel strongly about it because it's hard to fill my roles.
Oh, I know.
So I do think we do have something in code that says in a
Like
calendar
3
year, if they
consecutive.
miss so many, the commission can choose to
Okay.
vote off. So at this point, the calendar year started over.
Yep.
So I don't
Got
think
it.
anyone on my commission has missed enough to get to that threshold quite yet. But yeah.
I love everybody's input and such. It just,
Yeah.
if it's not working out, I'd rather them tell us now and we start looking and then go that way, so.
Yeah, no, I think that's
And I
fair.
came from a
Yeah.
place where you could miss 2 in a year.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And,
But when
okay.
there's only 12, I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
2 is a pretty significant fraction of 12.
But that's what I mean, it was 2 out of 12, and that,
Like
you,
6.
and you didn't have a choice, you missed,
18%?
you missed 3, you were gone.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
no, I think there's a
just
choice,
asking.
and I think it's just for us, we've really struggled to fill the planning commission role, so I would want to make sure we're, like, probably give them that benefit of the doubt.
You
But
should
the-
be seeing 3 applicants soon,
for the-
just to put their names in.
For the planning commission.
Anyone want to join the wetland?
I
Yeah.
tried,
Yeah.
I tried,
I've been trying that
twisting their
everywhere.
hand,
Yeah.
twisting their arm around that, one of them has a lot of wetland complaints, and I'm like, hey, you could be on this one.
There you go.
So, that was number 1. Number 2, I just, out of the blue, I saw we have a utilities Corcoran truck. Says utilities parked out here. So that's the new guy? And he's got a drive home vehicle. What about, don't we have other public works folks that have drive homes that aren't identified? I'd really like to see them identified as Corcoran Public Works. Is there a reason we don't list those? And I'm not just picking on Public Works, because I'm gonna pick on the police next. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, Jay has kind of asked us to reevaluate that process.
Oh, Jay, you took the wind out of my sails, man.
So, I mean, we could bring back some, that's one of the things on my plate. We've done some analysis. There's some options there.
Okay.
It hasn't been fleshed out. We've been doing some research. We do have some options for basically non-emergency vehicles, but we may choose to want to mark them. That will probably be a decision by.
And then when they are drive home, take home vehicles and stuff, they're driven home, parked, and then used to come back to the city, or are they personal vehicles for the people? Just to ask.
Well, I'll add that with kind of everything that's happening and even the expansion of the utility department, we're going to have to kind of refine our on-call
Okay.
policies. And part of the take-home vehicle, in my mind, is part of the on-call policy. So we can update you on what are past practices, and there's going to be some conversations about what we look like going forward. So it's a prudent question. We can certainly bring that back to you with more detail.
Okay, and then on the police side, we've gotten a number of new vehicles.
So we've converted some of them, so the former deputy vehicle, deputy public safety director vehicle, is now over here, and it's been marked differently.
It's marked City of Corcoran, right?
Yep, that one is, so the old
So
one.
all of those are City of
So
Corcoran.
the former detective vehicle, so we
Okay.
now have a, what is it called? It starts with a T. What is that kind of, it's an SUV. Tahoe? No?
Traverse.
Traverse.
Okay.
So we got a new Traverse as their detective vehicle, and so the old one is in the process
Okay,
of being converted, if it's not complete already, and so.
but then do we need unmarked, or?
So some
At
vehicles
least
we
I'd like
do
to
need
see-
unmarked, but I think it's important for us to clarify
Okay.
why we have certain vehicles unmarked, and to be intentional about that. So like Kevin was saying, like we can come back, do some analysis for any vehicles that we have and talk about why we mark some vehicles, why we don't mark some
Okay.
others. And that even goes into another layer of it, is even plating vehicles. So.
Yep,
so-
no,
So
I
tax,
just-
tax exempt plates
I'm
versus
asking-
not tax exempt
I'm
plates.
asking because, so,
But Kevin, as he's bringing that up, like I've asked that question, like, why are we choosing to use tax exempt plates on some vehicles and not on other vehicles? And for us to do an intentional analysis and
okay.
let you know why we're doing stuff, because I imagine sometimes people ask questions.
And on the, yep, and on the police side, if it can just be a ghosted Corcoran police badge below the rearview mirror on both sides. If the thing is black, make it gray or a slate gray, just something that,
We're trying
I
to
don't know
avoid
why.
any more deer devices on there too, you know, so
we
our
need,
vehicles that have hit a deer, we
deer
put a sticker on it.
distractors, yep.
We don't want
yep.
any deer devices anymore.
Yeah, we don't, anyhow, and then I had one on more, but it's late, so I can't remember what it was. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Nope.
Anything else?
So with the schedule, just a reminder, February 21st and 22nd is the Elected Leaders Institute, both the foundational and the advanced programs. Nalisha has already registered you. And so if you've got any questions about that, drop Nalisha a note and she can answer some of those questions. But just a reminder, that's coming up. We'll add March 3rd as our strategic planning session. Is there anything that council would like to see on a future session that hasn't come up, or just steady as we go? So, right, or we can wait until
As we
March
touch
3rd.
our strategy, yeah.
After we've done our strategy.
Or at least
session.
just not at 11 o'clock on right now.
Yeah.
Give me a